I'm Łukasz Szelejewski, and I'm glad to be here. I'm working at Kontakt.io. What may be surprising for you, I'm not a mobile developer, but I'm a head of the hardware department. But the mobile development is kind of my hobby. I'm developing some application on the Android platform, especially when I was working at Motorola Solutions, not mobility. What I would like to talk about today is a beacon security. You can see we start with a sentence that your beacons are in danger. They are indeed, but maybe we shouldn't say this so strong. And when we start our marketing campaign about our new upcoming security improve, many people have started to writing us email, why did you hack our beacons? No, we didn't. We just want to say that it's extremely easy to get access and to own a third-party beacons. What I would like to show you later after a few words of the introduction. Yes, your beacons are in danger. When we started our company, it was just a few months more than 2 years ago. Nobody were thinking about the security of beacons. Now, when the huge companies are starting those deployments, they also started to think if there's possibility to use their infrastructure or something like that. How many of you have opportunity to work with beacons? Yeah, that's good news. How many of you were using a Kontakt.io beacons? That's bad. I mean, that's bad because there are a few of you, just a few. We'll change this, I hope. So briefly, what the beacon is. Beacon is a small piece of hardware with a battery embedded, which is constantly broadcasted its data using the BLE technology. BLE, it's a Bluetooth Low Energy technology. It's extremely popular right now. I think that it's also embedded in every cell phone or smartphone you already have here. Beacon is broadcasting its data continuously. It's from 50 times per second to 1 broadcast per 10 seconds, which is useless, but some of companies have to broadcast like this to save the batteries. Data being broadcasted is very short. It's in iBeacon profile. Actually, it is, not to make mistake, 20 bytes. The data is divided into 3 separate sections. The first one is the proximity ID, 16 bytes are constant. The second and the third parameters are 2 byte values, major and minor. It's getting dark. Should I stop now? Of course, we can change those values during the configuration, and depending on what values are received by the cell phone, you can embed a different action in your application. So when you approach one beacon, you can display the, let's say, hello message. When you approach the second beacon, you can display message, the toilets are right here, yes, so whatever. Those values are typically constant. But there are some solutions for shuffling those values. Why are they shuffled? I will tell you a bit later. In other words, what we can say about the beacons, beacon give you a context for your application. You can use the beacons for locations. You can use the beacons for triggering many different actions. And the main concern right now is how to make sure that the beacon you already see is the one you would like to see. It's your beacon, not the one from the other company. During development of our security features, we identify 4 different types of attacks directed to the beacons. not all of them are real attacks. This is actually the hijacking, cloning, piggybacking, and cracking. What is the first one, piggybacking? Actually, it's not a kind of a real attack. Let's imagine the situation when you have deployed, let's say, 500 beacons in your shop. You created a wonderful application which displays ads, which directs people inside of the building, and many, many other stuff. But there was a other company, actually your competition. What are they doing? They don't have to buy 500 beacons. They just go to your shop with the cell phone, get the data from all the beacons deployed around, save them, and create its own application. What will do this application? It will display the lower prices of every product in the shop and say, go to me. I will sell you this much cheaper. So first of all, it's like using your infrastructure for advertising a product of a third party. Few years ago, I would say that a year or 2 years ago, it was not a huge problem because there was no many deployments. Right now, the number of deployments are increasing rapidly. Okay, the second type of, let's say, attack is a cloning. It's a kind of an opposite to piggybacking. Why? Because cloning is, when the values are constant, it's extremely easy to scan the beacon and create a copy of the beacon. You can then take those copies, like a physical devices, it doesn't matter, and move those beacons in to other place. And then start using a third-party application for the purposes of your business. Because this application has a fixed value for the beacons you already cloned. It will work like a harm in your place. For example, kind of outdoor gaming, many, many different examples. And hijacking. Hijacking is actually, I think, one of the most complicated attacks right now, but I will show you later that many companies claim that they have a really good security. We thought so, but when we start to investigate the third-party solutions, our competitors' solutions, everybody is doing that. It's nothing strange. So when we started to investigate how secure are the third-party beacons, we were a little bit shocked. Because some of them are advertising, we have encryption, AES 556. No one can break this. But then you can open SDK and see the passwords embedded in the SDK. It's weak. I will show you later what kind of password is embedded. Actually, you don't have to even open the SDK to see this. Hijacking is about the breaking security, so you have to, maybe to sniff the packets, maybe to decompile the applications, to see how the communication is made between the beacon SDK and between the API or the cloud system of different vendors. So it's not as easy as a cloning and piggybacking, and you just go and scan the beacons and you're almost there. This requires a little bit of expertise in the matter of hacking, but there are a lot of tools on the market right now for that purposes. What's the worst case in the hijacking is that if you own the beacon completely, you can change all the passwords internally. And it's like stealing the beacon physically, because the actual owner of the beacon cannot do anything with this beacon right now, because passwords are changed. Of course, there is something like a restore default settings, but to restore default setting, you have to know the password. So you don't know password, sorry. The only way to reclaim hijacked beacons is probably to go to the place of the installation, take this beacon, and program the new software on the clear or the memory using the other hardware devices, programmer tools, or whatever. One important thing, the beacons actually are not expensive. Let's say the beacon will cost about $10 to $15. And you have to deploy 500 beacons. So for us, probably it seems like a huge amount of money. But what is most expensive, and what our customers are saying, that beacons are cheap, deployment is expensive. Because if you have to send a field engineer to the second end of the country to exchange the battery in your beacon, it will cost hundreds of dollars, not tens of dollars even. Okay. And the last possible type of attack directly to the beacon is a cracking. It's the most difficult. I mean, it should be the most difficult because the hardware vendors, like in our case and many of our competitors, we are using the Nordic Semiconductors as a chip provider, and there are many hardware logs inside. So if you put the software to the beacon, you can protect the software against read back. The same situation with the memory. Actually, if you expose your source code, it shouldn't be a big problem if it is well designed in terms of the security. The problem is when you expose the source code and the data for those source codes, like the passwords, like let's say kind of maybe domain names, certificates, and so on, so on. So it should be very easy for everyone to just, switch one bit in the code to enable such securities. But in many cases, it is not done. So you can easily take the software, take the memory layout, and let's imagine the situation that there is a new startup. They have nothing. So they buy our beacons. What they do is to make an exact copy of the hardware design. It's not a hassle for anybody. It's easy. But creating software is not as easy. I mean, it's not easy because it's time-consuming to achieve the certain level of feature complexity. So what they do, they connect the programmer tool, get all the software from inside, get all the data from inside, and start manufacturing, let's say, better Kontakt I/O beacons. If the factory is located outside Europe, so probably those beacons will be much cheaper. Yeah. So it's a really bad news for everyone who spend a lot of dollars for hiring people, for development, for contracts with software, with hardware providers. What are the possible outcomes from those attacks? This is just for your information that the biggest loss for the company will be in case of the cracking and in case of the hijacking, because you will probably lose the real hardware, which for your company is quite expensive. Okay. We also find that many companies implemented some of mechanisms for protecting beacons, but only some of them. So it seems like, sometimes it's better not to implement any security than implementing just a few of them, because it makes people feel comfortable. I'm safe because I have encryption, I have a shuffling, and many others. So if you feel you're safe, you're starting to making stupid things. So yeah, that's we are trying to keep the security in all aspects of the beacon. The first one, how we would like to protect against the cloning. Of course, we cannot protect if somebody came to our installation and make a, log all our major minor pairs and start using them for our applications. But every time we use a beacon, we can authorize the beacon because all communication with our beacons are secure, encrypted. So if we ask beacon for something and it will respond, we are sure that this beacon is ours. The second thing we are protecting against is a piggybacking. We are constantly shuffling major and minors. Two of those three values which are broadcasted in the iBeacon profile, we are shuffling. How are they shuffled? We do not disclose. If you want to unshuffle the beacon, to get the real major and minor of the beacon, you have to ask our API. There is an algorithm which uses the secret keys for each beacon, and it shuffles those values pseudo-randomly. So if you ask for the beacon and you receive the major one and the minor one, we're translating this to the real values. For instance, 10 and 10, whatever. We are able to shuffle beacons as often as once per minute. Our default setting are once per day. I don't think that there will be a third-party company coming every day to visit your shop and make scans of your beacons. Maybe. But as I said, the people, field engineers or whoever, are quite expensive. Hijacking. This is actually the more difficult thing for us to protect against hijacking. There are so many aspects connected to the encryption, connected to the exchanging keys, passwords. So we decided not to share passwords. At the moment of the manufacturing of the beacon, we embed the password inside, and we push this password to our API, and it will be never shared between. Of course, we can use a certificates. We can use a Diffie-Hellman algorithm. But what? What for? What's more interesting about complete end-to-end encryption is that you can share the configuration safely. You can go to our API, create a configuration for a particular beacon, and share this configuration to anyone who are using our SDK. Because configuration is encrypted using the password of the particular beacon. So only one beacon will be able to understand this configuration. So you can pass this to all the mobile phones with our SDK, and if this beacon will be in the range of such phone, the configuration will be applied. What's more interesting, each configuration may be applied only once. Why is it important? Because there may be someone who is sniffing the packets. He will take the configuration packet and try to push the package all the time to the beacon. What will be the result? Denial of service. The beacon will be still applying the same configuration, which is stupid. And if you connect to the beacon stops broadcasting. So no other phone will be able to detect such beacon. Yeah. How we protect our devices against cracking? We have two approaches. First one is to use all the vendor-provided mechanisms like a debug log and similar. The second approach is to encrypt our software. This is not as important in terms of the cracking, because software without data is not as valuable. It is, of course, it will speed up the development of a new product in case of competition, but without data it will not work. Actually, we don't have this encryption implemented yet, but it will be introduced soon. So all our new features will be secured from reverse engineering. Okay. This is our complete security solution, which we believe it's quite safe. Of course, nobody may be 100% sure that the algorithm is secure. And if here is someone who is interested in security, you may contact at Kontakt.io and request the free samples. We will send you free samples of our new security features, beacons, and ask you to try to hijack those beacons, because we will then improve the security based on the knowledge, based on the description of the case of the attack you already made, or maybe someone already did, and I don't know. No. Okay. Risk studies. Excuse me. What I would like to show you is how to take a complete control over a third-party beacon. I would not tell you who is the manufacturer of the beacon. It doesn't matter. I mean, the similar problems are exposed in the majority of the solutions on the market. You may ask why I decided to take the one particular beacon from the one competitor. No, this was the first one I took. So there was no point in making a different approach, because I was a bit afraid, because we would like to show you a real hacking right now, and I was not sure if I will be succeed. But it turns that it was easier than I thought even. This company, the owner of the beacon, claims the full end-to-end encryption and a full security of the beacon. Of course, AES, long passwords, even some hashing algorithms. So, for people not involved in security, it sounds really good. The beacon is cheap, the beacon looks beautiful, and it's secured. And what I can tell, it's not the beacon from the second Krakow company. They use connection passwords. So you would like to connect to the beacon, you have to know the password. Not really exactly. First thing, what I did was to download I would not say beacon management application. Our hardware provider, Nordic Semiconductors, created it is called NRF Master Control Panel application. This is application to communicate with with all the BLE devices on the market. So you can talk to your thermometer, to the beacon, whatever you want. So the first thing I did was to try to connect to the beacon, to see if this beacon really requires a password for connection. And I'm not sure if there is a connected state. Yeah, it's connected. And I will leave the beacon connected for whole the night. Nothing happened. I mean, when you are connected to the beacon physically, not only listening the broadcast, but you are connected to the beacon consumes much more energy. And they claims 2 years of battery life. I actually consumed about 3% per night, just by leaving the phone and leaving connected beacon, nothing more. What's the outcome? Actually, when I'm connected to the beacon, nobody else can connect. So let's imagine a hypothetical situation. You have a company, you won a great contract for a beaconizing huge, food retailer, whatever. You are going to deploy millions of beacon, but you have to do a trial. And I'm your competitor, and I know when you will have this trial. What I'm doing? I'm going to the shop, create the beacons with the custom software, put the beacons around, and ask those beacons only to connect to the beacon of my competitor. So as you can see, the trial won't happen because application will be unable to connect to the device. What happens next? Probably the food retailer is pissed off yes, and are going to ask another company to make deployment. Probably this will be my company. So you can see the risk is huge and potential loss. Yeah, so the first thing. Second thing I did was to discover all services embedded in the third-party beacon. What services are? Services are places where the beacon it's like a kind of a phone book for the beacon. Services handles all the information about the endpoints you can communicate with the beacon during the connection. So if you have a beacon with thermometer, you probably will have a service with characteristic which lets you read the temperature settings, not settings, measurements. The another service will probably have a characteristic which lets you set thermometer settings, like a measurement interval, like accuracy, whatever. So yes, as you can see in the picture, we have 2 dedicated services for the beacon. I put a few numbers on bold. And let's see. Of course, those services may be described using some kind of a string text to be more meaningful to people who are reading this. Unfortunately, this was on purpose. There are no described with text, so we don't know what are they doing. So I used the Wireshark and a sniffer dongle and take the original application from the manufacturer and try to set the different values, and I received a mapping between the characteristic and internal handles inside this beacon. Because when you send the packet over the Bluetooth layer, you have to know handles. If you query the beacon of the services, you receive different values like this DEAE 0001, 2, etc. All right, so I created a very simple mapping. This doesn't look fancy right now, but what next? I took the application and I tried to set up the password because the beacon is shipped without any password. Factory settings are like anyone can do anything with the beacon. Okay, they decided. And what you can see here is I took the application. Of course, I can't show you the application because you will know the provider then. I would like to do this. So I pressed the button to set up the initial password. The password was test pass, 8 letters. And I saw that the application sent a request to the beacon. This is this request. It's a screenshot from the Wireshark. That's bad, actually. What we can see here is because there is no test pass plain text in this value. But this value is 16 bytes long. So this is probably kind of a hash. All right, so I set up the password. So my next step is to try to connect to the beacon to get the right access, because it turned that a beacon, of course, you can connect to the beacon, you can read all values, but if you would like to write something, the beacon refused such communication. So I found in the application that when I set kind of a parameter, the application asked for a password. So I think that this is the password verification. In the first step, I set the password. Now I will use this password for every connection. So now you can see the hash is exactly the same as the previous one. So right now, I'm sure that it doesn't make sense to hash the password, because every time you set this hash is identical. So the only secure approach here is that you do not expose the original password. You do not expose the plain text. But okay, what we have right now? Right now we have a hash which can be used for getting write access to the beacon. Good. What can we do now? If we have write access, we can change the major, minor, we can change the proximity UID, we can change intervals and all the internal settings of the beacon. So we can set up the beacon to advertise at the maximum power. We can ask the beacon to advertise frequently, like 50 times per second. We will kill the battery in 1 month, probably. So it's also like, making a bad things to our competition. We don't want to make a bad things to customers. So we can modify advertising data, we can modify parameters, and the next question is, so if I have a hash, can I modify the password? This will let me lock the beacon for the original owner. It will be my beacon from that time. I was a bit afraid because this is a hash, so maybe it's a hash with kind of authorization. So if I change 1 byte from this hash, the beacon will refuse this hash. No. I will show you, let me remove the full screen. Yep. This is a video from this Nordics application. I will tell you what happens. This is actually the beacon which is the topic of this presentation. I'm discovering all the services. Now I know that the first and the second characteristic in the first service, the first one is for granting access, and the second one is for changing password. So what I'm doing? Let's set the hash to the first characteristic. Of course, I prepared this so you can see the test pass and the hash here. Let's send. We can see that the beacon responded. We can see the value updated when the touch point is present. So I guess the beacon accepted this password. Okay, so the next characteristic is for changing password. So let's try to change password. I will change the last character in this hash. If it is, kind of authorization there or something like this, on the integrity checking, the beacon should refuse. But the beacon didn't refuse. So actually, I don't have to know the plain text anymore. I can change the password for every beacon without any hassle. Let's disconnect and connect again and see if we get the read access using the new password, or maybe beacon refuse and we'll still use the old password. Application automatically saved this, but look, I tried to push the original password and the characteristic didn't respond with anything. So let's try to apply a new password. Yeah, working. So we effectively changed the password on the beacon. So now we are the owners, proud owners of the new hardware without paying anything. That's great. It was very easy, as you can see, to take the complete control over the third-party beacons. And it took just 2 hours. So let's imagine the company who who has a big order, thousands of beacons, and somebody who don't like this company. Troubles. Okay, let me find the mouse pointer. Great. So, in one word, owned. Actually, I could stop here, but there is one question. What's this hash about? And I thought that maybe they trying to use the one of the industry standard. So you can see the original hash, I mean the hash of my password, and I generated many possible variants of different hashes for this test pass. There is no such entry. So it looks like it's a bit more complicated, so maybe they try to authorize those passwords somehow. I go to the GitHub and get the Android Sdk. I decided to go with Android Sdk because, you know, it's much easier to decompile, and I'm an Android developer. So, surprise. I mean, it's surprise because they are using a MAC hashing algorithm. So they embed kind of an integrity mechanism, but they don't use them on the beacon. So from the software point of view, it looks beautiful. You're secure. You cannot change the password because you have to sign the password. Yeah, but look at this. The signing key is also present here, embedded in the code. In every entry, when you have to hash password, you have such entry, like a utils MAC SHA 512. Okay. Happens. But I go a bit deeper into the code to find something more interesting. First, it's a proof that we can generate the same hash using the standard-based SCH hashing with a secret key. But I go deeper and I found something much more interesting. This company is introducing something similar to our implementation, full encryption of communication between SDKs and the beacon. And my question is, what password are they using for encryption? Louder, please. Not the same one, but much easier one. 8 charts. Password. Look at this. Can you believe? It's decryption, but it is a AES CBC variant. So encryption and decryption is done using the same function. Look at the password. It will be probably one of the first approach, I mean, first trial of a brute force. And I can imagine someone who make a brute force and just presses start button and the algorithm immediately stops, because that will be the one of the first trial. Yeah. What's amazing? It's because I took the first beacon from the batch. We have a basket with the third-party beacons we buy. Of course, we are doing some kind of intelligence, but everybody is doing that. So I took let's say, the most beautiful beacon from inside. It's based on the same chip as ours, so yeah, it's beautiful, but it's not secure at all. And I think that this is a great example how to not write the software, mobile software, because anyone can take the software and open it. Actually, I expected just a bit more sophisticated stuff inside, but I think it's a great example. Yeah, and I think that's it from my side. So if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer. We have 2 books for the best 2 questions. So if you ask 2 questions, books are granted. Can you pass the microphone? Thank you. Turn on.
Are you protecting your beacons from hijacking by man-in-the-middle attack?
The man-in-the-middle attack is not possible.
Why?
Because what can the man-in-the-middle do with our data?
For example, we have this situation when someone is coming to our beacon and want to configure it, and I have 2 receiver transmitter in this same place, and then I want to do man-in-the-middle attack.
Yeah, so what you can do, you can intercept the package. Yes? The package with configuration. Because there will be only data, yes, this will be the only data which will be sent to the beacon. Nothing more. The package is encrypted. Password is never shared. So what you can do with the package? 2 options. You can leave it for later and try to use later. You can try to brute force the algorithm, but the AES, it's quite secure. Of course, I won't say that we are 100% safe for any vulnerabilities, but actually in our case, I think that the man-in-the-middle attack is not the case, because what you can do with the package, you can set the package to the beacon and apply this configuration. You can take the package and go to the other beacon and try to apply the same package to the different beacon. It won't work. Moreover, if you try to get the same package and try to apply once again to the beacon, it won't do this, because there is a mechanism which track the configuration. So if you apply the same configuration twice, the second time will be refused. So even if you try to apply configuration not in the right order, it will refuse older configuration.
Okay, and I have 2nd question. You said that every beacon has unique password, and you place this password on the production process. And
yes.
This could be time-consuming in large-scale production, and how you manage it?
Actually, it's not time-consuming, because we are when we get the order from the customer. Let's say this is 5,000 beacons. For a large deployments, our customers probably want to have certain values programmed in the configuration. They don't want to get 5,000 the same beacons and they configure on the side. It's too expensive for them. So they ask us for creating configuration. And during this configuration, we are embedding keys. We don't let the unconfigured beacon outside our factory. So when you receive a package from us, the beacon is secured. It probably have a shuffling enabled, and the full configuration is applied. So you can go to our web panel and see all the stuff set for you. Any other questions?
Yeah. You showed us.
Could you? Yeah, thanks.
You showed us how to the unsecure way to set the password on the configuration, and I wonder if you could describe how you guys do it in the secure way, technically.
In a secure way, yeah, we have a room with the pin control. A few guys staying with the guns and protect anybody to enter this room. That is how it works. It's a special place where nobody has access. So if you would like, yep.
No, I was more like you saw they used the hash value that is sent to reset the password. And yeah, how does Kontakt.io does it when they want to set that password.
Set that password? No, because password is set only once at our side. Of course, you have a possibility to set a different password, but you have to go to our web panel, trigger the command, set a new password. What will our API do is to create a new configuration package, which is encrypted using the old password, and a new password is embedded in this package. So that's why it's safe to change the password, because it's encrypted. Of course, it is possible that you somehow the password leaked. But there is only way how to leak the password. You have to go to our web panel and try to read this password, because there is a possibility for customers. I think that some of our customers want, for some reason, connect to our API and use the beacons as a standalone. Right now, it's not possible. You have to connect to our API and generate all the configuration packages securely in our cloud. Is this answer for your question?
Yeah, thanks.
I have to move a bit because the slide is so strong, so I can see you.
Yeah. Hi, thanks for a great insight into this, but I would like to know about the other part of the whole development and the security part. How bad is it for the customers who are connecting to the beacons? Okay, you talked about the loss for the development as well as the companies who are deploying the beacons. What about the customers who are visiting the, say, fair and get connected to the beacon? I understand that data transferred is only 20 bytes maybe per packet, but in future, or what is the current scenario? Does it make any harm to the client devices which are getting connected?
Yeah, I mean, configuring beacons and using beacons are two separate things. When you configure, you are connecting to the beacon. When you're using beacons, you are just receiving the advertised package and maybe scan response package. Those are not encrypted. So, I mean, from the user point of view, there is no change. Maybe one small change, because if you would like to avoid a piggybacking, you have to rotate your major and minor. So if you decide to rotate this once a day, and you would like to cache those values for a 7-day, you just ask our API, and it will give you 7 pairs of the major and minor for the next 7 days. So we don't have to connect to nothing. You connect just once for let's say 7 days. You are also able to take all those values. If you said we will have, let's say, 256 shuffled values, so you can take those values pre-computed from our API. So you don't have to connect to anything, if you would like. We know that there are some places where there is no internet connection, and you will still, love to use the beacons for indoor navigation, for instance. Other questions?
Yeah.
Yep.
You said that Diffie-Hellman is not an option. Why do you don't like PKE?
It's not like we don't. I won't say we don't like. It's a very good scheme, but
too complicated. Too many data have to be.
Actually,
changed.
all of them. Actually, all of them. There is no need to embed such. Right now, there is no need to embed such a key exchange mechanism. Because, we can implement a great security, but the security level must be adapted to the resources you are protecting. If you're protecting, something which is very expensive, you have to, have a much higher security level. We believe that most of our customers will never configure the beacon after deployment. So there is no need to implement such algorithms. And of course, we are working in embedded systems. We have 16 kilobytes of RAM. Actually, most of them consumed by the Bluetooth LE stack. So last couple of days, guys in my team were working to save 500 bytes of memory. So if I put the whole staff making use of a Diffie-Hellman algorithm, is it me? So I should probably put a DIMM memory, like operating memory, into beacon, because it's consuming.
Someone? Okay.
5 minutes left, so I think the 2 last questions.
I wonder what's about security of your cloud, because as I understand, the most unsecured place is cloud. If I hack cloud, I will can prepare configuration for beacons for this customer.
Yes, and that's a very good question. We have a separate team responsible for cloud development. We are using Amazon systems, but I'm afraid I cannot answer you about the solutions, protocol mechanisms we are using. So the only thing I can say right now is I trust them. But you're right. If this is what I said at the very beginning, you have to employ all security mechanisms, because if you left one hole and anywhere in this chain, it's like no security at all. Here was one question, I guess. No? Yeah?
So you briefly mentioned on DOS attacks, like denial of service.
Yes.
I assume you don't suffer from them somehow. But if you mention DOS attacks, you must think about distributed denial of service as well. So would it be possible to just organize like a bunch of requests being sent all the time? And how do you protect from them?
Yes. So we protect in that case that if you try to send something to our beacon, if you connect to our beacon, you have 30 seconds to do a management. If not, the beacon will disconnect you. And after third trial, the beacon will go into the non-connectable mode for 20 or 5 minutes. I'm not sure. So for the next 5 minutes, it will only be broadcasting. So your customers will be able to use the beacon, but nobody will be able to connect this beacon. The same situation is if you get the package, configuration package, and try to apply this all the time. Of course, this package is valid because it's signed, it's encrypted, but if you try to apply this for 3 times, after the third time, the beacon will go into the non-connectable mode. Is it okay? And the last questions, please.
Once again, me. As I understand, someone who would like to make something worse for me as a customer, for example, could just make devices that will lock all my beacons for some period and do this. For example, every 5 minutes, try to lock all beacons, and I will never can configure it. Yes.
Yes, the configuration will be not possible for 5 minutes, but you can take the beacon in different price, make a configuration, and put again. Beacon will be still broadcasting, so your client application or mobile application will still see the beacon, but will not be possible to connect it. So you're right.
So we can just block configuration system, not functionality, as I understand.
Not exactly, because of course you can block if you are remotely. Yes, so you cannot go to the place and be close to the beacon and force the connection. You're right. But if you have a deployment, you can, there is one way to enable beacon in a connectable state. Remove and put battery again. So you can take the beacon in a safe place, connect, reconfigure, and go back. Yes, it's a kind of a problem, but
okay, thank you.
So thank you very much.
We
It
have
was a
2
pleasure.
books. So Łukasz, tell me who is the winner.
This was a very good question. I'm sorry you didn't say your name. And the guy here, sorry for pointing by the hand, but
Okay. Thank you.
if you have any questions, I will be at the Kontakt stand, so feel free to ask. Thank you.